All right. Grandpa Jubal has a lot of thoughts on this Wednesday at 1 a.m. Why the hell am I up at 1 a.m. making a video? So I have sleep onset insomnia. Had it ever since I was a kid. And I remember even at sleepovers, I'd be like, how come everyone's asleep and I'm the only one who's awake? Just kind of the way it is. I always get this, not always, but I often get this burst of energy in the middle of the night. Very convenient. Actually, during COVID, I was able to sleep. I had this routine down. I was sleeping by 10, 11 latest every day for 2 months straight, and I was waking up 5, 6 a.m. It was awesome. Then I went to Monterey, definitely was not sleeping early, came back here to Vegas, and now last night, well rather this morning, I had a bike ride. And last night I couldn't sleep until 4 a.m. I had to wake up at 6 a.m. for the bike ride. So then I go on this bike ride, then I nap during the day, so now, because I napped for several hours, now I can't sleep. So, make a YouTube video, have a bright light, because that's gonna make things better. Sometimes these late nights, they help me reflect, and I was listening to some Blink-182, those, brings me back to like elementary school days. It made me think about why I do what I do, and I think a lot of us kind of have it in the back of our minds, but we don't reflect on it, I guess, like explicitly that frequently. It just got me thinking that I feel so lucky, and I feel so grateful to you guys because I'm able to do what I do. And whether that's Med School Insiders or starting MEM or I'm just doing these YouTube videos, right? This is fun. The coolest thing is when I get comments from you guys. And there's one comment from a few days ago, and this person's like, hey, I don't know if you're gonna read this message, but I'm a student who's not even pre-med, and I watched these videos and I implemented these tactics, and now like my grades are way better and I'm a lot happier. And I'm like, that's why I do this stuff, man. It feels awesome. So thank you. And the trolls too. Sometimes when the troll comments are they're so creative and so hilarious. Anyways, just feeling the appreciation, feeling the love. Wanted to share that with you guys before I dive into this video on finances, on money. So on the Med School Insiders channel, on this upcoming Saturday, or I guess when you watch this will be this past Saturday, I made this video summarizing Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You How to Be Rich, the book. I really like Ramit Sethi's content. I think it's hilarious. He has a no-nonsense attitude. At the same time, finances, they're super simple. I got into personal finance and investing essentially when I was towards the end of med school, 2016. And I read The White Coat Investor, the book, not the blog. There's a blog that has a lot of information, but the book is like very condensed, high-yield stuff. And I read the book, probably told me 80% of what I needed to know, to be honest. But then from there, I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is really important because finances are very important to living a life on your own terms. From there, I probably read another 8 or 10 additional finance books. Boglehead's Guide to Investing was a really good one. I read the Tony Robbins book. It's okay, kind of verbose. Anyways, I'll have a link below in the description for my favorite finance books. The thing is, this is like really simple stuff. And while we should be covering this in high school, we should have courses on, basic finances, things like that. We don't, but that shouldn't be an excuse. We can all learn these things on our own. And Ramit's book is really good, but if I'm being honest, I don't think I learned anything. It is a great book. Again, nothing against Ramit or his book, but just that this subject area, if you read a couple books and if you spend some time on the personal finance or financial independence subreddits, that's most of what you need to know. All right, my approach to finances in college and in medical school. So in college, very frugal, finances were very tight. I mean, I did pay for college and medical school on my own without any financial help from my folks. Now in college, I did have a job. I was doing research on inflammatory bowel disease, and it was actually paying $15 an hour and I was gonna do it for free, right? But I was able to get paid for research, which is great because it's great for my medical school application, and I was making money, which could help pay for, decrease my loan burden, pay some tuition. And in terms of actually tracking my expenses, I used an app. I've used a few different budgeting apps. None of them are really great. They're pretty simple. So I used Spendbook in the past. I don't think you can even download on the App Store anymore. The exact app isn't that important. Essentially what these apps do is you categorize the expense, you say the dollar amount, and you put like a note, and then you have a date. So then you can reflect back, you can look at either this month or reflect back on previous months and say, okay, how much did I spend in this category versus that category? And then you can adjust your spending. I've never actually had a strict budget per se, but what I've done is track every expense, like laundry, $2 of quarters, I will track that in my in my app. That's what I did for years, for all of college and all of medical school. I no longer do that, but we'll talk about that in a second. It's pretty quick to do this, by the way. So if you just pull up your app, it should take no more than 10 or 15 seconds. So if you're, at a restaurant or whatever, you just quickly do it, done. And then that data I think is very, very valuable. The important thing in college was me getting my fundamentals down. So living below your means, right? I mean, can you say living below your means when you don't even have an income and you're taking out student loans? Anyways, I was being very frugal, right? I was being very careful not to spend more money than I had. I didn't need the new iPhone or whatever every single year. I didn't need to go on some expensive trip, right? I could still have fun and save money. Simpler times, actually, now that I think about it. So when establishing foundations, I was learning about credit. I was opening up, I only had 1 or 2 credit cards at the time, but always paying them on time. What I used to do was actually, I was afraid to do automatic payments from my bank account to my credit card, which was kind of silly. And I would manually do it. But then one time I miscalculated and I ended up paying like 40 cents in interest. I've never paid interest except for that one time. But I paid 40 cents in interest because I miscalculated how much to pay from my bank to the credit card. And then after that, I was like, you know what, this is stupid. And then I just set up automatic payments from my checking account to my credit card. And then in medical school, more of the same, living below your means, but I got really into credit card churning. And that, I think, was the 3rd year of med school, 2nd or 3rd year of med school. I was doing it for several months, actually for a couple of years leading up to residency interviews, so that when it was time to go into residency interviews, and I went to like 20 cities, 20 different interviews. Some of them were in the same city, but these plastics programs, they don't coordinate. So I went to like Cleveland Clinic and then flew back to San Diego, and then a couple weeks later flew back to Case Western, same city, and then flew back. Having these points with airlines for free flights was so clutch. I saved tens of thousands of dollars, seriously, from credit card churning. So that's why I'm really passionate about sharing that with you guys, because I know that you're probably strapped too if you're a student. And if you have medical school interviews coming up or you have residency interviews coming up, then that's very valuable. So I actually have a playlist on credit card churning. All right, next, let's talk about how I recommend you approach finances. Let's start with black and white thinking. Black and white thinking is very common because in all areas of life, especially finance, because it simplifies things. And it's good when you're first starting out to kind of understand the basics, but it's not the truth. The truth is in the nuance. The truth is in the gray area. For example, debt. You have some financial experts who say, all debt is bad, pay car cash, pay for your home in cash, pay everything in cash. I understand why, right? The black and white is that, okay, people they have poor impulse control, they're gonna spend money if they save it up in their bank account, and that's why you should just buy cash and not have any debt, because otherwise you're gonna get into a whole load of trouble. Yeah, that makes sense if you don't have financial discipline, but if you are disciplined and you're able to save money and not just spend everything you have, or you're able to live below your means, it's actually not the best way. It's not the most financially sound way. For example, if a car, let's say you buy a used car for $10,000 and you can buy it either cash up front, or you can get a loan on it and pay, let's say 2% per year, which is a great rate, right? That $10,000, you could actually invest in the stock market or in other asset classes and get greater than 2%. So then you would actually end up coming out ahead if you invested that 10K versus buying it in cash. So that's, again, the gray area, the nuance there that I think a lot of oversimplifications will completely miss. Now, this is just one example, but use this same approach for anything in finance. I mean, anything in life really, but in finances, understand why is this way of doing things recommended? What is the actual reasoning behind it? So for example, in credit card churning, I actually disagree with a lot of what the community says. They talk about like valuations in my most recent video. I don't care what the market value of a Southwest upgraded boarding pass is. If it's $50, I would never pay $50. So I can't actually say it's worth $50 for myself, right? It would be worth like $10 because that's how much I would actually pay for it. If you get in the habit of questioning these blind truths, then I think you will come out ahead and you'll actually achieve a state that is more in line with what you prioritize and what is most important to you. All right, so now finally, let's talk about my current approach. Now, I used to be all about being super frugal and saving, a dollar here, a dollar there because I had to, because I was in debt, I was taking out loans, and I didn't have financial help. But nowadays, now that I'm out and I'm starting my own business, the important thing to realize is that you can always make more money, but you can't save past a certain point. Otherwise, your actual quality of life will suffer. For example, if you're already pinching pennies on food, and then you want to save another $100 every month on your groceries or restaurant or whatever, then your quality of life is going to take a hit. But if you just make an extra $100, $500, $1,000 per month, which you definitely can in this day and age, it's an amazing time to be alive with social media and all these online businesses that are so easy to start, then that's just a better way of approaching things. So a lot of my optimization has kind of shifted over the years to the current state. So the current state, I don't actually track anything anymore in an app. I haven't done that in a few years, but I do use mint.com for all of my personal expenses, and it will automatically track every credit card transaction and then categorize it. I review it once a week. Sometimes the categories are wrong, but this is useful because I can track fraudulent charges, and then again, I can categorize and reflect on my spending and see if I can spend more in a certain area or if I want to, cut back. The other tool I use is Personal Capital. This is like my favorite tool because every morning it sends me an email with all of my credit card transactions. I have like 35 credit cards because of churning, so I can't actually check the website of all these cards every month. So by having a single email, I can track again for fraudulent charges and just kind of see what's going on with my credit cards every single day. And then the other thing with Personal Capital is it tracks your net worth. When I first started using Personal Capital, I had started residency. I had a negative net worth because I still had loans. And it's just so satisfying to just see that number, hit zero and then slowly start to become positive. And it tracks your loans, your bank accounts, your investments. It's like my favorite financial tool. And if you want to sign up, there's actually a $20 referral link down in the description. And then the third tool is QuickBooks, which is for my business expenses. That's not really that important here. Now, in terms of the actual institutions I use Vanguard for most of my assets, for my IRA, for my taxable accounts. I use E-Trade because they have a good solo 401k option. If you're self-employed, you want a solo 401k, E-Trade, in my opinion, is the best option. Not gonna be applicable to most people. And the third thing I use is Schwab. So Schwab has this checking account where you can use any ATM and they will reimburse you the actual fee. So that's super clutch, especially when you're traveling internationally. In Schwab, I also have a very small allocation for fund trading, fund stocks. Most of my investing is actually index funds. So I go with Vanguard. I do VTSAX, which is the total domestic stock market, and the VTIAX, which is the total international stock market. Because I'm young, I'm currently 29, I do not have really anything in bonds. I am 70% VTSAX, that's 70% domestic, and 30% international. Now this is a point that I've done a lot of research on, and the short answer is there's no right answer. A lot of people, including Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, said, you know what, you don't need international. These US companies are so well diversified internationally that it's not necessary. And diversification is very important because you want to, if you have all your eggs in one basket and then those companies don't perform well, then you're gonna be in a world of hurt. So diversification essentially is hedging your downside risk so that you're not gonna be caught with your pants down, sort of thing. So one school of thought says you don't need international exposure. And then the other school of thought says you should actually just weigh the entire world stock market, which is about 55% US and 45% international, because you don't know what's gonna perform better long-term. So recently, yeah, the US has performed a lot better than the international markets, but we don't know what's gonna happen in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Again, there's no perfect answer here, but I said, okay, I understand both sides. I'm gonna choose something in the middle. So I did 70-30 rather than 55-45 or 100-0, 70-30 is what I'm happy with. Now, in terms of picking individual stocks versus doing broad market index funds, again, I do the latter. The individual stocks, I'll do like one or two here or there in my Schwab account, but 99% of my portfolio is in broad market index funds. During this whole COVID situation, this has made me even more confident in this approach because I have some very smart friends who are very savvy investors who are able to put a lot of time, energy, and they have a lot of knowledge and background with investing. And even then, they haven't beat the S&P 500. Despite the dip, despite doing all the market research and looking at the balance sheets and all this stuff. And they're like stressing out because it's a lot of money on the line and then they're not doing as well as they should and they're down and now they're like breaking even. It's not worth it. You're very, very, very unlikely to beat the market long-term. In the short term, sure. I made a couple plays recently. I made a few $1,000s. It was fun, but I pulled out because I know that long-term, I am not going to be able to beat the market reliably. Now, the other thing here is, okay, maybe you think you can. However, is it worth the actual time right now? The way I see it is, at this stage in my life, my net worth is gonna be lower than it is, let's say in 5 or 10 years. At that point, sure, 1 or 2% is gonna be a huge difference. But right now, 1 or 2% isn't that big of a deal. So at this point in my life, I should actually spend less time worrying about investing and optimizing and all that stuff and focus on building my business. That's actually a much better ROI, whether that's Med School Insiders or MEM or the next company after that. So for that reason, I focus on just auto investing. Every single week, money automatically goes into these, VTSAX and VTIAX. I don't have to do anything, it's automatically scheduled. And that means I'm getting 80% of the performance with 0% of the work, and I can focus more of my time and energy on my businesses. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching. It's now 1:30. I'm gonna try to get some rest. See you guys in that next one.